So hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Master Duel format a little bit. So notably, Master Duel is best of one, meaning we just do one match and then we peace out. We never see each other again, essentially, right? So in this format, there is one notable kind of issue, right? So if we break it down to basics, Yu-Gi-Oh can be divided into like just three card types, right? There are a lot of like subtypes and whatnot of cards, right? But essentially it just boils down to like um, we have monsters, we have spells, and then we also have traps. And of course, different cards affect different things, which makes it somewhat frustrating almost against certain types of decks. So, notably, like, let's say we have just, we can go with any monster deck, for example, though. So, let's say we have Branded, right? So, with Branded, this is primarily like a monster-based deck, but it also has some back row mixed in, and then we could go for like a deck like Super Heavy Samurai. Super Heavy Samurai has like 99% of the time just no back row at all, right? Because of the type of deck it is, right? There are no like spell traps that you really have to worry about in terms of like end board, right? In terms of like having to worry about it for branded, you do have to worry about it somewhat. So there is like retribution, and then there is branded compulsion, I believe it was called, or something like that. And then brightest blazing branded king. All of those are searchable and whatnot, right? But then there are decks that just hard focus on like traps, right? So let's say, for example, Eldlik or Labyrinth, right? So you just run like a bajillion traps, whatever, right? So aside from like going first and second not being consistent, regardless of whether you are going first or second, any given deck does just better against like any type of deck here, and there's only so much generic stuff you can run, right? Just for example, against stun, right? So like Macrocosmos, Fossil Dyna, Inspector Border, all that stuff, right? So if you run a deck that's just consisting of just stun cards, cards like Ash Blossom Joe Spring, Maxi, none of those cards really do anything because special summoning does not happen. Searching does not really happen, right? But if you go second into it, of course, there are only so many generic cards you can run that are worth running. So, like for example, Lightning Storm feels like a relatively bad card to run because your opponent can just play around the Lightning Storm, and then this just becomes a completely useless card. Assuming your opponent just has like uh 5 extra deck boss monsters or whatever on the field, and they're all in defense position, right? And no back row. Lightning Storm, literally dead card. Only thing you can do with it is discard it for cost of something like, I don't know, Foxy Dune, for example, sure. But then, like, on the other hand, if your opponent was playing a lot of back row, that's where Lightning Storm would actually come in clutch now, right? Because this trade's really hard. Assuming your opponent did like set 5 pass, this goes +4, essentially, right? Just Lightning Storm in general. There are, of course, some decks that can do things that makes Lightning Storm uh, not work as well. But funny interaction, I guess. So if we special summon Conquistador in defense position, it should still get destroyed by Lightning Storm because it says destroy all spells and traps your opponent controls, not destroy all cards in your opponent's spell and trap zone. But that's me getting sidetracked again. So Backrow Removal, it can do pretty well, right, against back row decks, but at the same time, against monster heavy decks, this card could be like just almost useless or completely useless or just not that useful in general. It's very situational. So the main talking point of today is just consistency, and just having consistency and being able to play into just whatever, right? This is kind of annoying to an extent, right? But this makes certain cards like S tier that some people may not realize in like a Master Duel best of one format, right? So notably, one of the best cards in the game right now for going second, like not Lightning Storm, evenly matched. There are pretty much no decks aside from like maybe Pure Runic that can afford to just pass on like essentially one or two cards and just sit on one card. This one card being Runic Fountain, right? Aside from like probably that exactly, or like literally a Rise Heart Pass, there are no decks that don't get hurt by evenly matched in like some way, shape, or form. Because even if you have just essentially two monsters, like just for example, Baron Chizao, if we drop evenly matched, this either will get rid of the Omni Negate or it trades off one guy. Evenly matched. The only downside to this card, of course, is that you give up your battle phase, but aside from that, right? This always trades favorably, assuming you have this for going second. And this has the highest like possible swing of any card, right? Where you can go like essentially +9 by banishing your opponent's cards face down, like just 9 of them. And this has one of the best forms of removal in the game, being banished face down. So that's always amazing. Being able to deal with both essentially just monsters, spells, and traps, like just in the back row. So they're like very little in the way of like just decks that are not affected by evenly matched. So yeah, amazing card. And then, for example, this is why like Maxi is still like somewhat fair, is because this card is just generically like usable, right? So if you were to Maxi against Labyrinth, it'll at least be an upstart usually, but like no more than an upstart. So you have that going for you, I guess. That's great. And against like combo decks, it'll be death sentence, right? But I mean, you usually go +1 or +2 against like control decks that summon a lot even. Maybe +3 if or yeah, +2 if you're lucky, I guess. Yeah, because you if you don't run Maxi, you have just had a different card in hand. So, I mean, yeah, +2. Yeah. So the issue, of course, is that like even if you're going first, there are decks that just don't do as well into, for example, back row or monsters. Just notably, let's go with Zombie World. If we actually go ahead and go check out Synchro and then Zombies here, uh, guess how many cards here in this whole list actually affect back row? Like, have any effects that can even like affect back row, not just remove it, just do anything to it. Well, let's see. Does this do anything? This card becomes unaffected. This card can destroy one monster. This card destroys one spell trap your opponent controls. So Tengu the Winged Mayakashi can maybe do it. Disregard how you actually summon like Tengu the Winged Mayakashi. Well, I guess even if you do, this only pops one back row, but okay. Then we have Shirodoi Sun Saga. This can pop up to the amount of zombie synchro monsters that are either banished or in your graveyard. Okay, so that's essentially two. And then don't bother checking the rest, because literally all of these affect monsters. Well, I mean that's kind of protection, but that has Foolish Burial, Battle Effect, and then this has a Target one zombie monster in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon that target to your field in attack position, but destroy it when this card leaves the field. This one is negate a monster and also banish a monster from the graveyard or field. Special summon back a monster. Banish a monster on your field to special summon this back. This one is each player mills 3. Okay. And then we have Shiranui Saga. But yeah, this essentially does nothing. Shamisen Samsora Soro Cat. Quick synchro. And then Arcfiend Zombie Skull. Battle Protection, right? No, not Battle Protection. Card effect Destruction Protection. Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon, whenever a zombie monster is destroyed, just in general, by battle, you can special summon a zombie monster from either graveyard to your field. Revive King Hades, negate the effects of effect monsters destroyed by battle with zombie monsters you control. Oh, okay. Shiranui Shogun Saga, gain attack. I believe that's what this one is, right? Yes. And then this one is also pretty much gain attack, but this has a pop here, I guess. Destroy one spell trap on the field if you banish a fire monster. But I mean, not really generically splashable in zombies, so the only one you'll ever see is like maybe Sun Saga, and even then Sun Saga isn't run like a whole lot, because you would have to quick synchro this actually. Same thing with Squire Saga, this would also have to be quick synchroed. So the only spell trap removal that's like easy to access within just zombies, for example, if you were playing it at all, is Tengu the Winged Maekashi if you special summon this from the graveyard. And this just pops one back row. That's it. And then every single other monster you have does nothing. So if your opponent literally just flips skill drain and then like I don't know, let's say goes in match, what now? Not much you can do about that, eh? Or actually even worse, Tikaboo. Tikaboo skill drain. Now what? And then they just special summon like a big bungus or something. Cool. Well, even worse actually is that if we just think about this, you probably can't special summon these guys that often, right? Like, I don't think it's super easy to get multiple pops off of these guys, but there are decks that have it even worse than this somehow when it comes to dealing with back row, right? So, yeah. There are decks that just can't deal with back row at all. Like, assuming you're going first and you just get set 5 passed on. It's a lose angle. And then there are decks that just can't play second at all. And you'll just lose regardless. But yeah, just in general, if you get hit by a lot of back row, the best way to deal with it is, of course, running back row removal. But the more back row removal you run, right? Like, let's say if we generically run stuff like Duster, we run stuff like Twin Twisters. These cards are completely dead in hand, right? So let's real quick build a small branded core. It doesn't have to be that much, but okay. So let's grab this, and then we go like, I don't know, this. Grab some of these, and then some more back row removal. And then let's drop in like copies of like Ash Blossom. Sure. So the more copies of different back row removal cards you have, the less you have, well, the less room you have for engines and other generics like Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. So in this hand, for example, we have Evenly Matched, Twin Twister, Raigeki, and Harpy's Feather Duster. And of course, a lot of these back row removal cards also are not that useful going first, except for like Twin Twisters maybe. Twin Twisters is okay, because your opponent won't, like, typically won't get a chance to activate their cards, right? So they set a card, you destroy them. Plain and simple, right? But yeah, here we also, since we don't have much engine space here, like we only have this one piece of engine being Branded Fusion. If Branded Fusion gets negated here or something, some form of interruption happens, we just don't really have a good way to deal with it, right? We're going second. This is all right, unless of course, once again we get like hit by Ash Blossom Joe Spring or something, right? Then we're left with a whole lot of nothing. So that just sucks, right? And then Harpy's Feather Duster here, not activatable. Evenly Matched, not activatable. Raigeki, not activatable because normal spells. And Evenly Matched kind of works like a normal spell sometimes, but yeah. Not much is going on here in this hand. So another downside to running so much Backrow Removal. And then there is the ultimate issue of like assuming this was actually just generic Backrow Removal, like this was Lightning Storm and this was also Lightning Storm. Okay, but what do I do if my opponent is playing a monster heavy deck, like let's say for example Super Heavy Samurai? So first thing, Evenly Matched does trade really well, but if your opponent has a negate heavy board, right? Certain boards are not negate heavy boards, like for example Pearly. Evenly Matched goes really hard into that, but if your opponent is playing Super Heavy Samurai, this only trades for one of the many Super Heavy Samurai negates. And then, like, let's say these cards, all three of these are Backrow Removal. There is nothing that my opponent cares about me removing anyways. So, even if I resolve this, the other two cards would not be activatable, right? And then I have just Branded Fusion or whatever, and that would be negated. And then we have our top deck as well, which is more Backrow Removal in this case, which once again does nothing because we already removed all their Backrow, which does nothing essentially. So yeah, not a whole lot going on there, right? So there is no like obvious way to deal with this issue, but it can kind of feel bad to play. Like I have these backer removal cards. Like as you can see here, I have Twin Twister, and I can generate 2 more copies of Twin Twister, no problem. I have 3 copies of Evenly, Harpy's Feather Duster. But if my opponent, of course, has just no back row for me to remove with these cards, it'll feel bad to play. Like this even applies to like one of the strongest like anti-back row cards, Red Reboot. Cool. So I have Red Reboot. But my opponent is playing Super Heavy Samurai. Just that's the best example I have for like just a deck that's just super monster based, right? Aside from that, there's also like Kishtira. What am I red rebooting against Kishtira exactly? The random generic back row they happen to open, I guess. But I would be much better off evenly matching that in this case, right? But against like, for example, maybe a Dinomorphia or like Eldlick, Labyrinth, Red Reboot goes really hard. So this could honestly be at 3 and it would not matter because what exactly am I using Red Reboot on? Right? So not much that you can do with Red Reboot, honestly, because if you consider specifically Labyrinth, right? Here's an issue. You could technically activate Red Reboot turn 1, but this gives your opponent the ability to set any trap they want directly from their deck, including like Skill Drain. Just for example, right? Ah, so that's no bueno. And then let's say Red Reboot just gets like Solemned, then maybe you're screwed. And then there's also if for example Red Reboot does resolve, your opponent sets something, but then like assuming you're playing branded, you only have branded fusion as your play essentially, no matter what you do. So it's like normal summon a Luber at branded fusion. Branded opening, special summon a Luber to add branded fusion, and your opponent just simply has Ash Blossom Joe Spring in hand. Now they have the back row. You negated whatever it was. It was bad enough that you want to negate it on the spot with Red Reboot, and then there is the card they just set, which is no bueno. And you're also down half your life point, so you're not that likely to survive. Like, just in general. So, And you have to somehow hope to top deck something that allows you to recover from this position. So, a lot of things you have to hope for here. which is not great, to say the least, right? So in general, though, uh, there are only so many cards that play fairly well into both back row and also just monster decks in general, right? So combo and control, basically, right? So these cards are like Ash Blossom Joy Spring is a big one. Infinite Impermanence is also a somewhat like decent one. And then aside from Ash Blossom, I think there is just Evenly Matched. Uh Maxi is iffy. It depends exactly on what it is because there are a lot of control decks that don't care as much about Maxi, but it still like benefits you sometimes a little bit, but not enough because just going second is pretty bad against a lot of decks, right? So yeah, it's kind of situational, but going first and second is just a little bit more complicated, but just uh the primary thing, well, the primary takeaway from this is like you can run a lot of like certain cards, right? But those cards can lose to like these cards, right? So these cards, however, like can be completely useless against certain other cards, right? So that's a major pain point of Master Duel, just not having a play. Because to play a duel, you usually want to have like just, two people playing the duel, right? Just a little bit of back and forth, but this is a little bit rough. If we don't even have generics, like for example, Ash Blossom Joy Spring doesn't work against Stun, but it at least works against, for example, Labyrinth, right? And Eldlick, because you can like Ash Blossom Joy Spring Sanguine, right? But against Stun, you're not really Ash Blossom anything, right? And then even your backrow removal feels kind of bad to play if you're playing it because 3 of Solemn Judgment, and also like draw cards that can get you Solemn Judgment. So that's not exactly fun to play against. But yeah. There's also, of course, monster decks, where in which case, if you're running this anti-stun cards, like these anti-stun cards like Evenly Matched and Red Reboot, then you just don't really necessarily have the play against certain other decks. Like, just for example, if you have Red Reboot and Evenly Matched, well, at least they do something against Sword Soul, but against, let's go Super Heavy Samurai again. What exactly are you doing with Evenly Matched and Red Reboot exactly? So, Red Reboot, no activation, Evenly Matched, this will just get negated. Here, you're much better off playing Dark Ruler No More. But okay, now once again, back to Stun. Dark Ruler No More, this does nothing against Stun, right? Forbidden Droplet, this does pretty much nothing as well because they have so much macro that's just disgusting, right? And all you might be able to do is to like negate uh Fossil Dyna or Inspector Border, but they still have a bunch of stun back row, right? So probably goes in Tikaboo and stuff like that, right? Skill drained, whatever. There's just in general no way you're playing through that. So that's just miserable. And yeah, not a whole lot you can do about all these things, but sometimes you gotta just do your best, I guess. And yeah, this is just something to think about for deck building, at least though. Just cards that are generically good in every situation, like pretty much against like every deck, genuinely has more of a place in Master Duel because this prevents you from getting like cheesed, essentially. Your stun right now is essentially just a cheese deck. It doesn't win like in a best of 3. Like, ain't no way, right? Like, I can easily load up on backer removal and then just play like main deck a bunch of like monster related kind of cards like Raigeki, Deck Ruler No More, Maxi, for example, right? And then like the next two duels, I'll just side in like, I don't know, like literally 8, 9 Backrow removal cards easy, right? And then there's no real issue after that point, right? So you could just do that, right? And you're doing better. But yeah, best of one, no side deck, right? So the value of these cards is just a lot higher situationally. So with like different kind of meta shifts, like notably with like more with super heavy samurai coming out, like even if it's not like necessarily the strongest deck, it is being played, and that is a fact. And that is still like grounds for people to run Droll and stuff, right? Which is fine. There are decks that can play under Droll, right? But the main issue is people are going to be cheesing you with, for example, a lot of backrow decks now. And if you run this backrow removal, like all this is just bad against super heavy samurai, so it's just pretty miserable to play in that regard. Not much you can really do about it right now. There are a few decks, like very few and far between, but yeah, there are a few decks that can play under these stipulations, right? So that really limits like the pool of like decks that you can play, which sucks. But yeah, this is just a kind of issue. Like, of course, if you simply win the coin flip with insert deck, you'll be fine, right? But more often than not, you'll want to be running, of course, generics that allow you to deal with like whatever deck you're facing or whatever decks you are facing, like just control or just otherwise, right? But it is fairly hard to like pivot into well, not pivot, but just build a deck that plays well into both control and back row for the most part. A lot of decks will struggle to do so, so you'll mostly be relying on generics to go into either like type of deck, and you'll probably be like the typical ratio of like back row removal is actually like no evenly, no reboot, just one duster and a dream. That is your hopes and dreams. It is in this one card. Let's see. Okay, I am against stun. Hey, I win this duel. Nice, I have Duster. Okay, I do not have Dusters. Seems I lose, right? Well, actually, I accidentally left Twin Twisters in here. Just pretend this is like something else. Like, I don't know, maybe a Visceral or something. Wow, I am against Labyrinth, and they are about to dimensional uh, barrier me for fusion. Well, if I had back row removal, I could have stopped this because they wouldn't know what I am playing, and I still have a chance, you know, I still have a shot. They might declare synchro or something instead of fusion, and we could be solid. We could be having a good time. But no, our opponent just declares it because we don't have any backer removal to threaten them to use dimensional barrier, and they can immediately see we add branded fusion and then chain to branded fusion dimensional barrier. Oh, well, nothing we can do about that. Go next. So those kind of situations never feel great, right? And then there's certain boards you can just look at and just think, damn, if I was playing insert card here, I could completely just obliterate this board and I could actually win from this position unless my opponent has maybe this card in hand or that card in hand. Or if that specific back row is this card in their archetype, maybe I lose. But if they use it at this time, they will lose because I actually have this card, right? Like even in the kind of game I just described, we're actually just gaming there. We're actually playing the duel, and then it's like, all right, I tried, but you know, couldn't quite get to it. You know, uh, honestly, I much prefer those games than like just games where it's just pretty much just non-games. Like I don't know how I feel about this either, but like for example, I'm against stun. I drop back row removal. They either have like solemn judgment and I scoop, or all their back row is removed and they scoop. But we have a lot of games that are kind of like this, which is annoying, but you know, it is what it is, I suppose, right? Sometimes those games happen, right? Not every game can be a banger. I mean, some games you just open 2 Geo. In fact, I mean, I should have screenshotted it, I guess, but yeah. I just had like two games that are pretty close to each other where I just completely bricked by drawing 2 Geo, like 4 times. Well, not 4 times, like 2, 3 times, actually. Yeah, just bricking on Geo. Great. And then for turn, I was bricking on Geo, and then I drew into the second Geo. Didn't open it that time, but I mean, I drew into it, so I guess that counts, right? Surely. And the crazy thing was I had like evenly and right Geki or something like that. So I had enough cards to force out my opponent's like primary interactions on the board. So all I had to do is draw a starter. I did not draw a starter. In fact, I drew like the opposite of a starter. I drew my Garnet, the other one. Well, that duel didn't go great for me, but yeah. In general, there's a lot of nuance, but this is kind of an issue that's not like really resolved. So if I'm against controlled deck, I won't Backrow Removal. If I want like uh just monster removal, it's useless against Backrow. So that's a bit of a shame. So it makes it a bit hard to run these. And not just run these, it's just you don't really have good options for going like second unless you just hard focus your or like dedicate your deck to going second specifically, right? So just having no play at all can kind of feel bad, but on the right side, we have at least evenly matched, so this usually always trades for something, so you have that going, and sometimes you can play just because you've evenly matched, so that's pretty enjoyable. And there's the downside to these cards as well, of course, like, for example, evenly matched, uh, like, if you get your opponent just Mirror Jades, then they have Mirror Jade effect against your evenly matched. So if you remove Mirror Jade, you have to deal with the destruction effect. And then there is also the banish effect, and then the effect to set a card in the end phase or special summon, like potentially Fallen of Albaz if they send uh Titaniclad, right? So there's that kind of thing. But if you open like Ash Blossom Joe Spring instead, Ash Blossom Joe Spring on Branded Fusion, but then you look at this again and it's like, okay, your opponent uses Branded Fusion, but they have Called By, so then your Ash Blossom was pointless. Then you were better off doing something else, or maybe it was Cross Out, and then there was actually a different card you could have used to stop Branded Fusion. That would have been better. So yeah, that's about all I got to say on this topic. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. And if you have any thoughts, opinions, hopes, dreams that you want to share in the comments below, feel free to do so. And yeah, I usually like talking about this kind of thing. So if you guys have anything to say, yeah, just feel free to do so. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.